The UK and France sign a new agreement to try to stop migrants crossing the Channel on small boats. Britain will pay France millions more for increased patrols on French beaches and improved surveillance.
Our cooperation and collaboration with the French on the Channel, on the UK coastline, on the French coastline is absolutely integral.
So far this year, more than 40,000 migrants have crossed the Channel. That's a record number. We'll be live in Dover and in Paris, also this lunchtime. A warm handshake between President Joe Biden and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, despite the tensions between the superpowers. Ukraine's President Zelensky visits the city of Kherson to celebrate its liberation after the withdrawal of Russian troops. The court hears from a parent of one of the babies the nurse Lucy Letby is accused of murdering. And an astonishing attack on his own club by Manchester United superstar Cristiano Ronaldo. He says it's trying to force him out.
I feel betrayed, and I felt that some people that don't want me here, not only this year, but last year too.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, England take on New Zealand as the hosts look to make the final of the Women's Rugby League World Cup for the first time in 22 years.
Hello, good afternoon. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has signed a new agreement with France to reduce the number of migrants crossing the Channel on small boats. The UK will give France more money for increased patrols on French beaches and for better surveillance, such as drones and night vision equipment. For the first time, British immigration officials will be in French control rooms. Well, so far this year, more than 40,000 people have made the crossing. That's the highest number on record, as Richard Galpin now reports.
According to latest figures, 853 people were detected crossing the Channel in small boats on Sunday, after 972 crossed on Saturday. These are record numbers. The government's under pressure to bring them down. Today, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has signed a revised deal with her French counterpart to try to turn this around.
There's no quick fix, there's no silver bullet. Our cooperation and collaboration with the French on the Channel, on the UK coastline, on the French coastline is absolutely integral to ensuring that there is a robust barrier preventing people disembarking from the French beaches in the first place.
Under the deal, overall funding will rise by £8 million per annum to £63 million. This, the government says, will enable it to boost the number of patrol officers by 40%, taking it to a total of 300. UK staff will also be embedded in French offices. But this local MP says the deal does not go far enough.
We've had joint controls, we've had joint intelligence now for a number of years with the French. That isn't tackling this issue. The only thing that will tackle this issue is making sure that the boats are stopped in France before they get in the water. And unfortunately, this agreement doesn't get us to where we need to be to tackle this very urgent and very serious small boats crisis.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said the government needs to tackle the people smugglers, the source of the problem.
Most people will look at this and say, look, there's more taxpayers' cash now being spent on a problem of the government's making. This has been going on a very, very long time, and the Home Secretary has said that the asylum system is broken. She's right about that. They broke it. So yes, this is a step in the right direction, but there's so much more that needs to be done.
For their part, the French authorities say they've managed to prevent 30,000 small boat journeys in the Channel this year. But the challenge in patrolling hundreds of miles of coastline is immense. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
Well, in a moment we'll speak to our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield. First, though, let's go to Celestina Alulade, who's in Dover. Celestina, how much difference do you think this new agreement is going to actually make to the number of people arriving there on the Kent coast?
Well, Ben, the Home Office admits there's no single solution. At the moment, about 40% of crossings have been stopped by the French. But authorities say that figure needs to double to stop the people smuggling gangs. Now, the government has said that about 4% of asylum claims made by people crossing the channel by boat last year have been processed. And that has led many people to criticise just how long it's taking to deal with the backlog. Ben.
Celestina, thank you very much indeed. And let's go to Hugh Schofield there for us in Paris as well. Hugh, what are the French government saying about this agreement that's been signed today?
Well, I think the first thing to say about this agreement is that there's relief on the French side that relations have improved sufficiently so that there can be an agreement. Don't forget that for the last 2 years, France and Britain have been spitting at each other, and it's only very recently, in the last few weeks really, since Rishi Sunak took over, that a new kind of atmosphere has set in, which has led to the signing of this agreement. And the French hope that it's a sign of more broadly better relations with improvements and progress on other issues, like, of course, the Northern Ireland Protocol. So that's one thing. The other thing, I think, is hope that this agreement will come into effect and have an impact. The French are very resentful when it's implied or even openly stated in the UK that they're not doing their bit, that they're turning a blind eye and that the police are simply watching as migrants cross. They point out the figures that show indeed that there are a lot of crossings, but that there's a very high proportion of stoppages as well. And that the basic point that the French keep making is that they have an interest in there not being a draw to Calais as well. They want this to work so that migrant groups and people smuggling groups no longer feel that it's in their interest to come and to send people up to Calais. So they hope this works, but of course it is only the latest in a long number of agreements like this in the past.
OK, Hugh, thank you very much. Hugh Schofield there for us in Paris, and also thanks to Celestina Olulade in Dover. Joe Biden has held his first face-to-face talks with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping since becoming US president. It comes at a time of heightened tensions between the two superpowers, especially over the island of Taiwan, which China claims as its territory. Well, the meeting is taking place on the sidelines of the G20 summit of world leaders in Bali. From there, our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head reports.
It's a summit of the world's 20 largest economies, but a great deal here hangs on just two. This meeting between the US and Chinese presidents was tricky to arrange. The two countries haven't been on such bad terms since the 1960s. But both Presidents Biden and Xi seem willing to try to halt the slide. Disagreements between the two superpowers already threaten this region's trade-based prosperity. Profound differences over Taiwan and the war in Ukraine have made things worse. No one expects this meeting to reset the relationship. The best hope is that it can be managed less acrimoniously.
As the leaders of our two nations, we share responsibility, in my view, to show that China and the United States can manage our differences, prevent competition from becoming anything ever near conflict, and to find ways to work together on urgent global issues that require our mutual cooperation.
They've allowed plenty of time for this meeting, so perhaps here Presidents Biden and Xi can start to address the differences between them. These two leaders have met many times in the past, and they're hoping to use that familiarity to overcome a deep mistrust between their countries, which now threatens the world's peace and stability. There is a lot else to discuss at this summit: climate, food security, energy and health. But progress is hard when the biggest powers can find so little to agree on. Jonathan Head, BBC News, Bali.
Let's go live now to our political editor, Chris Mason, who's also in Bali for that meeting of G20 leaders, including the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And Chris, I gather the Prime Minister's been speaking in the last hour or so. What's he been saying?
Yeah, that's right, Ben. Hello from a rather sticky and sweaty Bali. The Prime Minister arriving here after a 17-hour overnight schlep from London, leaving yesterday afternoon, straight into meetings with fellow world leaders. He's just been to see Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister. He will then, at the main gathering of all of the leaders here, condemn directly Russia's actions in Ukraine. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, will be present. It'll be the first time a British Prime Minister has confronted a senior Russian official about the war since the outbreak of the conflict. And it's the consequences of that war, coupled with the consequences of the pandemic, that will dominate the discussion here. The G20 is an economic forum, and the world economy in many parts is very weak at the moment. So that'll be the focus in the next couple of days before the focus returns to the domestic economic setting. That autumn statement, that budget coming up on Thursday, what many will see as a bad news budget. And Rishi Sunak has been asked about it and his approach to it in the last hour.
We shouldn't pretend that there aren't some difficult choices ahead, because that's what's required to ensure that in the long term we can do the things that will benefit people's finances. Because if inflation gets out of control, that's not going to help anyone. If interest rates keep spiralling, that's not going to help anyone. But I'm confident that what the government will deliver on Thursday will be fair, it will be compassionate, it will deal with the challenges we face and put us on a path to recovery for the future.
So absolutely central to Rishi Sunak's argument is that because he is willing to take tough decisions on Thursday, those spending cuts and tax rises, that's why the international financial markets are now looking on the UK more favourably. Now, there is a political argument to be had about his particular choices. His argument is they have to do what they're doing in the aftermath of Liz Truss's experiments earlier in the autumn. But the bottom line is what might be good for the international markets could be very, very difficult for millions of households around the country.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. Chris Mason there, our political editor in Bali. Well, let's talk more then about the options that the government have, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, for that long-awaited autumn statement that is coming on Thursday. Let's talk them through now with our business correspondent, Darshini David. Darshini, just talk us through what the options are.
Ben, who'd want to be Chancellor right now? Not an easy time. Now, we're all told we're going to have to pay more tax, but don't expect any pre-Christmas treats in return. As we heard there from Chris, a lot of what's going to happen on Thursday is about restoring the credibility of the government in financial markets, credibility that was lost in the wake of that mini budget. And here's why. The government borrows to fund part of its spending every year. To keep those borrowing costs low, it has to be seen to have a plan to reduce debt in the future. Now, economists reckon that that will take between, say, 30 to 70 billion pounds to fill that so-called black hole in 5 years' time. And much of that depends on how the economy fares, but it's a large sum, however you look at it. So on the taxes side, we could see various tax rates rise on things that we earn or spend on, but we could crucially see some changes in what's called stealth taxes. Now, that's when, for example, the band at which you start paying a higher rate of income tax doesn't rise even though your income is rising. So it may sound like a positive, but actually it means you're liable for more tax. And equally on the spending side, now we already know schools, libraries, the police, they're all struggling with higher costs to make those budgets stretch. But if the Chancellor wants to save, say, tens of billions of pounds, if he just doesn't increase their future budgets by the rate of inflation, that could save him the money, but would also mean we see cuts to services, and it's harder to give staff pay rises as well. There could be a bit of help for some people in the form of future help on energy bills post the spring. But ultimately, Ben, brace yourself. It's going to be belt tightening for most of us come Thursday. I'm afraid to say it's going to be painful at a time when we're already facing a recession.
OK, Darshini David there, our business correspondent. Thank you very much indeed. Well, those tax and spending plans announced in the autumn statement on Thursday will affect, of course, the budgets of households right across the United Kingdom. Our correspondent Fiona Lambden has been to meet one family in Bristol who are already having to make difficult decisions every day about how to make ends meet.
You're not going to wait till last.
Samuel and his boys live here on the 15th floor. Samuel used to be a security guard. He's been signed off sick. Today, he's sorting his benefits.
Yes, I have a sick note. This is the situation. There's Zenuel, there's Lysander, and there's myself, Dad, single father, living in a one-bedroom flat, overcrowded. We're on the 15th floor. I would literally sleep here, somewhere like that. And then what happened, he tends to come round because he wants some warmth. He'll come over to me and cuddle up to me. So we all end up sleeping like that. 9 years I've been here. There's families all over Bristol going through situations. And I really can't take any more of this. This is the first time I'm at news.
There's no slack. After he's paid all his bills, he's left with £52 a week to cover everything: school uniform, shoes and all their food.
You've got to find the times when they're putting the prices down.
What time is that?
If you don't get there in the morning, then it's usually at the night, so when they switch over. Literally, I had to save to buy cheese. That's not right. I take the money out so I know I don't go over, so I stay within that budget. If I go over, then I'll put stuff back.
Samuel's hoping he hasn't missed the offers.
No, can't afford to get that. Right, no, we can't get that because that's going to eat the money up.
So instead, he sticks with the basics and they head home to eat.
You let the little ones eat, and whatever is left, then I would eat it. So I'll take basically the scraps off of there. Sounds horrible to say that, innit? Scraps. I'll take what they are not eating. That's the way it goes.
And while it cooks, time to have a bath.
Because you can't put the eating on, you can't turn the water on, because that's gonna... You'll be out of pocket. So what I have to do, and it does save money, fill this kettle, max, and I'll boil that. So I would use this to have a bath with.
Samuel says heating the hot water in the tank is too expensive. Using the kettle is much cheaper, but it means Zenuel's bath is really shallow.
Well, you're living on the bare minimum as it is anyway, and then everything around you is going up. It's like being in a sinking ship, and you've got a teaspoon to get the water out to save yourself. That's what it's like.
Fiona Landon, BBC News, Bristol.
And the time is 17 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. The UK and France sign a new agreement to try to stop migrants crossing the Channel on small boats. And coming up, the boss of Primark tells us how shoppers are coping with the cost of living crisis.
Coming up on the BBC News Channel, the World Snooker Championships continue in York after world number 2 Neil Robertson's shock exit in the first round. This afternoon, it's the turn of world number 1 Ronnie O'Sullivan.
President Zelensky of Ukraine has visited the southern city of Kherson just days after his troops recaptured it following Russia's withdrawal. President Zelensky addressed some of his soldiers and sang the national anthem as the Ukrainian flag was raised over the city. Kherson was taken by Russia early on in the war, and its recapture by Ukraine is a major strategic blow for the Kremlin. Our correspondent Catherine Birahanga reports now from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv.
Scenes that were unimaginable just a few weeks ago. President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kherson, singing the national anthem as the Ukrainian flag is raised once again in front of the regional administrative building. He came to show support to the people here who have lived under Russian occupation for 8 months, and to send a message to the world that Ukraine has the upper hand in its fight against Russia's aggression. Zelensky was asked if this was the beginning of the end of the war.
This is the beginning of the end of the war. Because you see our strong army, we are step by step coming to our country, to all the temporary occupied territories.
A hero's welcome. But from people who still have no power, water, medicines, and even bread. It will be a huge task to get basic services back to Kherson. especially because shelling and artillery fire continues around the city. Russian forces are just a few kilometers away across the Dnieper River. President Zelensky is seizing the moment to showcase Ukraine's latest success on the battlefield. Victories are hard to come by in this brutal war. Catherine Biarhanga, BBC News, Kyiv.
The trial of the nurse Lucy Letby is continuing. Today the court has been hearing from the mother of identical twin boys. Ms Letby is accused of murdering one of the twins and attempting to murder the other. The nurse has been charged with murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 10 others at the hospital between 2015 and 2016. She denies 22 charges. Our correspondent Judith Moritz has been in court for us this morning. Judith, just bring us up to date with what's been heard.
It's, as you say, evidence this morning from the mother of twins who were born prematurely in July 2015, 29 weeks gestation. So they were premature and therefore they were patients in the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. Now, a court order means that we can't identify them, but we're describing them as babies E and F. And their mother was, at the time, just after their birth, a patient herself upstairs in the postnatal ward at the hospital. One evening, 5 days after they were born, she went down, the court heard, she went down to the neonatal unit to take some breast milk that she had expressed for their feeds. And she talked about the moment that as she approached the unit, she could hear screaming. She said, "I could hear my son crying and it was like nothing I'd heard before." She said, "I walked over to the incubator to see that he had blood around his mouth and I panicked. I panicked because," she says, "I knew there was something wrong. It was a sound," she said, "that shouldn't have come from a tiny baby. I can't describe it. It was horrendous. It was more of a scream than a cry." And she says that as she went into the room, the only person in that section of the unit was Lucy Letby, the only person in that room. But she wasn't at the incubator. She was across the room at the nurse's workstation. And the mother described how she'd asked Lucy Letby what was wrong, and that Lucy Letby had told her that it was most likely that the feed tube had been irritating baby E, and that was what had caused the blood. And she said that she should go back to the postnatal ward, nothing to worry about, we'll call you if there's a problem. And the court heard that later that night that baby E had died despite efforts to resuscitate him. And the mother said, when she was asked why she'd gone back up to the ward, she said she'd done so because she trusted the authority of Lucy Letby. Now, the nurse denies murdering baby E. She also denies attempting to murder his twin brother the following day, and she denies offences which are alleged against 15 other babies. The trial continues.
Judith, thank you. Judith Moritz reporting. The fashion retailer Joules has said it plans to appoint administrators in a move that could put more than 1,500 jobs at risk. The company said talks with potential investors to secure extra funds had failed. It is the latest retailer to hit trouble as consumers cut spending in the face of the soaring cost of living. Well, meanwhile, this year's Christmas shopping season could be a challenging one for many retailers as the cost of living crisis does start to bite. In a rare interview, the boss of Primark has been talking to our business correspondent Emma Simpson about what that company is doing to keep customers coming through the doors.
You don't see queues like this in many shops these days. It's the budget chain where baskets are filled to the brim and where some shoppers are now spending to save.
To be honest, I bought stuff to keep me warm in the flat because it's really cold in my flat at the moment. I've got storage heaters and they cost a fortune. So I've just been upstairs and got like warm jackets, like hoodies and things like that, just to wear really, just to add a bit of layer and a bit of warmth.
Freezing, no heating on. Costs too much, so we've got our dad in a care home and stuff, so we just can't afford it.
Yeah, so we're just buying warm bits.
Warm bits? Yeah, we'll all just wrap up nice and warm.
This is our snuddy department.
This is the snuddy.
Oversized hoodies doing a roaring trade as temperatures drop.
We've got a great selection and yeah.
Meet the boss of Primark, ready for a busy Christmas. Are people trading down to Primark?
I think customers are looking for better value all the time. I think at Primark we offer them outstanding value, and I think we are attracting new customers as a consequence of that. We have a vintage clothing area in the store, we have cafes, barbers, nail bars. We are, I think, the new department store.
But it's never had an online business.
They pick up their click and collect order.
Today, though, it's finally started a click and collect trial here in the northwest of England. But how many more clothes do we really need?
Don't you think that fast, cheap fashion is going to reach a tipping point pretty soon, that it's just not sustainable?
We have worked so hard and continue to work hard on ensuring that we're improving the quality and the durability of our clothing. We don't want customers to buy something and then discard it. We want them to buy, love and keep it in their wardrobe, hand it down to the friends.
No holding back here. Christmas shopping has started early on the high street.
Are you spending a bit less this Christmas then?
Probably not, no. I'm working more.
And we're looking for the best possible deals.
I think this is going to be a massively promotional Christmas. Black Friday is early, partly because that's the retailers want to get them going, partly it's because the World Cup's coming and retailers don't know how that's going to play out. But these people are looking for really good prices, and if they don't find them, they won't be buying products.
And unlike last year, there's plenty of stock, which retailers really need to shift. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Manchester.
Now, he is one of the greatest footballers ever to have played the game, but Cristiano Ronaldo has launched an extraordinary attack on his club, Manchester United. In an interview on Talk TV, which will air on Wednesday and Thursday, he says he feels betrayed by the club, that it's trying to force him out, and that he does not respect its manager. Joe Wilson reports.
Think of a footballer more famous, more successful than Cristiano Ronaldo. Perhaps you can't. He is revered at Manchester United, is or was. Ronaldo returned at the start of last season, but the club's latest manager, Erik ten Hag, is building his team around others. Ronaldo feels betrayal.
People should listen to the truth. Yes, I feel betrayed, and I felt that some people that don't want me here, not only this year, but last year too.
Cristiano Ronaldo originally came to Manchester United nearly 20 years ago. That first spell under Sir Alex Ferguson was supremely successful. Ronaldo believes that while he and football have developed, Manchester United are stuck.
Since the Sir Alex Ferguson left, I saw not evolution in the club. The progress was zero. Nothing changed. Surprisingly, not only the pool, the jacuzzi, even the gym. Even some points, the technology, the kitchen, the chefs, which is I appreciate, lovely persons. They stop in a time which is it surprised me a lot.
Naturally, all this is now the talk of football. For example, on the BBC's Match of the Day 2.
Whether he feels lied to or not, today just don't feel right to me. It feels. I don't think it's going to help him with the Manchester United.
I think it's disappointing, to be honest. I mean, he's got nothing to prove. So I can't understand why he would want to put his point across. Maybe, maybe his ego's dented a little bit.
The King is celebrating his 74th birthday, his first as monarch. A new portrait has been released of King Charles standing beside an ancient oak tree in Windsor. There are no public engagements planned, and he's expected to mark the day privately. The BBC is celebrating the 100th anniversary of its first official broadcast, a news bulletin from London. It included a court report from the Old Bailey, details of disruption caused by fog in the capital, and the billiards scores, of course. Well, our correspondent David Sillitoe is here with us now. Yeah, that amazing bulletin 100 years ago, but there's no recording of it.
Nothing from the early 1920s. However, we do have a little taste of what the beginning may have sounded like, because Arthur Burrows, who was director of programmes, re-recorded the opening call sign. The radio station was 2LO, which is the original BBC broadcasting station from London. So let's have a little listen to the sound of Arthur.
2LO Marconi House, London, calling. 2LO Marconi House, London, calling. 2LO Marconi House, London, calling.
There it is. That's Arthur, who was, of course, also the director of programmes, the main newsreader, and also Uncle Arthur. He did some of the children's programming as well. There were about 4 or 5 people employed by the BBC in London at that time. It was a tiny organisation. About 20,000, 30,000 people may have had a chance to listen in. But what we've got to remember is this wasn't the only BBC on that day. And there's been lots of new research being done about 2ZY, which was the BBC service coming out of Manchester. Officially started the next day, but the research has shown that, well, actually they were broadcasting on this day as well. And the lady of the magic carpet, Miss A. Benny, was doing a children's programme on that day. And when they go through the records, a lot of the firsts come from these other BBC stations. For instance, from Manchester, the first Variety, the first regular weather forecast comes from Manchester, the first radio satire, Algie's Priceless Piffle. So it is a sign that the image of London and the BBC, it was rather broader than that. And of course, that first bulletin, the billiard scores and the weather, foggy.
Indeed. Well, here we are 100 years later. David, thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid we don't have the billiard scores for you in this bulletin, but we do have the weather forecast with Nick Miller.
I've got some high numbers, Ben. There is a lot of weather on the way this week. What we are going to get again is the remarkable 21.2 at Porthmadog yesterday. That's the highest temperature the UK has recorded so late in the year. The temperature trend in Porthmadog, and indeed for the rest of us, is a gradual come down through this week, closer to the average for the time of year. Just we haven't had that for a while. That's why it is going to feel quite different. Look at the symbols. We're going to see a bit of rain as well, quite a lot of it in places, and the winds are picking up too with gales. We've got several areas of low pressure heading our way this week, so spells of heavy rain, gales in places around them. And of course, last week into the weekend, the air from a long way south of us followed the isobars around low pressure from the northwest of the Atlantic. That is a cooler direction. That's why temperatures are heading down. 100 years ago and today, some fog. Not much more of this, though, for the rest of the week as the winds pick up, though it is still very grey and misty across parts of eastern England this afternoon. We've got some rain out there into western Scotland that's clearing Northern Ireland. It's very patchy for Wales and southwest England, just very slowly moving further east. Just to the east of the rain band, you may get to see a bit of brightness. It's more likely behind it this afternoon in Northern Ireland, Pembrokeshire, Cornwall and Devon. Well, it's still a relatively mild afternoon out there. So, into tonight, we have this area, first area of rain weakening as it moves east. Clearly, there's some heavier rain following on behind into Northern Ireland first, Wales and the southwest. In fact, by morning, could be some difficult travelling towards South Wales, parts of southern England, maybe some local flooding in places and gales developing around southern and western coasts on a mild night. Any mistiness gone, though, quite quickly by the morning as the rain heads into eastern areas, so reaching those parts that start the day dry. Parts of Scotland could see some local flooding as totals mount through parts of Aberdeen, Perth and Kinross and Angus, for example. Behind the rain, we will be brightening up in the south and west. There'll be further blustery showers out there, and temperatures are a little down compared with today. Into Wednesday, very windy across the Northern Isles, still blustery elsewhere. There'll be some showers around. The next area of low pressure feeds the next area of wet and windy weather in towards the southwest as the day goes on. And the wind strengthened further overnight and into Thursday around English Channel coast and North Sea coast, and then quite stormy on Thursday in Shetland. Low pressure then will be around with further spells of rain and showers around. Quieter by the end of the week and the start of the weekend before more wet and windy weather next weekend, Ben.
All right, Nick, thank you. And that is all from the BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One now, we'll join the BBC's news teams where you are. Have a very good afternoon.